Numerous Warhammer enthusiasts and hobbyists have announced that they have canceled their Warhammer Plus subscriptions as well as other Games Workshop subscriptions, and that they are now boycotting the company at large after the company announced that they were not only retconning the Adeptus Custodes by adding in female custodians, but that they gaslit fans by claiming that the female custodians always existed, despite the lore previously indicating that they did not. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. So if you are not caught up to speed on what is happening in the Warhammer world, excerpts from the upcoming 10th edition of Codex Adeptus Custodes revealed that Games Workshop was adding females to the all-male faction. One excerpt reads, Custodian Calidise Tarvalia Kesh stood upon the bridge of a Cobra-class destroyer. Named Vigilant Flame, the warship belonged to the mighty Battlefleet Solar. She lingered in the shadows at the back of the bridge, positioned at a spot where she could observe the actions of every crew member, be they in the instrumentation pits, at the armament shrines, or in the cage of Shipmaster Lethwick. Stood ramrod straight before his command throne. Another excerpt makes it clear that Kesh is indeed a female Custodes, given that she wields a Guardian Spear. It says, Kesh was warned before anyone else aboard, sensing a sudden empiric energy spike coupled with the surge of overpressure and sharp temperature drop that presaged a teleport strike. Her Guardian Spear was leveled and armed before the first cry of alarm or a howl of a klaxon rang through the bridge. Games Workshop then confirmed the retcon and then chose to gaslight its own fans and players by claiming that there have always been female Custodes. They wrote this: since the first of the 10,000 were created, there have always been female custodians. And they posted that numerous times in response to individuals questioning this change. So following this retcon and the subsequent gaslighting from Games Workshop, numerous hobbyists, enthusiasts, and former customers have canceled their subscriptions to Games Workshop's subscription service, Warhammer Plus, and have pledged to boycott the company going forward. On April 14th, ex-user Grimdark1 shared a screenshot of him canceling his subscription. He wrote, "Kiss my butt, Games Workshop, not another penny." He then went on to explain why he canceled and why he's boycotting in his subsequent post. He said, for those asking what happened, Games Workshop disrespected their lore by changing decades-old lore of the Custodes, only taking males from the highborn families of Terra to become Custodes to, nah, women can be Custodes now too, and they've totally always been a thing since the beginning, even though they've never been mentioned in any codex or BL book before. We totally aren't doing this for ESG money from BlackRock and Vanguard. And that comment is because BlackRock and Vanguard own around 11% of the shares in Games Workshop. And BlackRock CEO Larry Fink is on record just a couple of years ago indicating that he would be forcing these DEI changes, such as we're seeing now with the female Custodes. So we're just going to kind of run through a number of people that are boycotting this, people that have responded to Grimdark, and then other people have posted on social media. You've got this guy, Velrunar. He says right there with you, I don't think I'll buy anything else from Games Workshop, and I'm not even sure if I want to keep anything anymore. Adeptus Econicus, or Econ Adept, said, I canceled mine too. I'm married with kids. He shared a screenshot of him canceling his subscriptions, and then he also shared a screenshot of his explanation on why. He says, you betrayed the lore and the fans. I will no longer spend money with your company. I will advocate others to do the same. You better hope the woke mob supports you, because I will not. Marty GH says, I canceled mine too. I'm married with 4 kids. One is gay, another is trans. I'm not against female Custodes, even though they've been the Emperor's favorite sons for years. I'm against the gaslighting from Games Workshop. A good lore-based explanation would have minimized this. Randy here says, I have canceled mine and sending an email that I want a refund. If they decline, I will dispute it with the bank and have it charged back. I am not renewing my White Dwarf subscription, and I was planning to do the new Imperium subscription, Combat Patrol, not now. Ost and Baron Ost wrote this. I've enjoyed this hobby since second as well. Long nights playing games with friends in a basement for years. I probably have models older than some of these people calling me a tourist. Yeah, sure. Now watch me leave with the money I would have spent on future stuff. Metroid Prime says it goes further for me. I also unsubscribed to the 40K channels I was following, except for Arch's second channel, just to track an impending crap show that this IP will become. If the source material turns to slop, there is zero interest in having it regurgitated by YouTubers. Johnny Dingo wrote, I'm doing the same. except Voldemort. I knew this crap show would come to 40K, but it still kind of sucks when it actually happens. Obviously, responding to the Metroid Prime there. We've got Chris Hart here saying, I feel you. I've been in the hobby since 1998, work a well-paid job and getting married later this year. God forbid those welfare left can afford Warhammer Plus, but I canceled mine as well. I hate people forcing an unwanted change on something already inclusive and representative. Corn Dog wrote, I was going to get one of the Chaos Battle Forces due out this spring, but I'm going to spend my money elsewhere. I think Warhammer, if you have this little respect for the lore, the intelligence of your customers, why bother? I'll stick with Old Hammer in the future. And so I think this is actually a really good thing that people are indeed boycotting this, boycotting Games Workshop and Warhammer due to its obvious embrace of feminist ideology. That is indeed what this is. Adding female custodies is clearly trying to push feminist ideology. It is also trying to demoralize, obviously, these Warhammer fans. And the fact that these people are boycotting this, I wholeheartedly support them. I don't really engage in the tabletop stuff. I've played Warhammer video games, such as the RTS game that came out, the Warhammer 40K RTS game that came out, I don't know, probably over a decade ago now. And I have a number of the Black Hammer or the Black Library books, specifically Horus Heresy stuff and things like that. So I have engaged in Warhammer, and I will not be purchasing any of their products moving forward. Obviously, I run that Park Place. I'm the editor-in-chief at that Park Place, excuse me. And obviously got the YouTube channel here, so I'll still be covering this stuff, obviously covering its demise and all of the other things that they will be doing to try and encourage other people to avoid this stuff, so they will avoid being demoralized by this and avoiding the propaganda that Games Workshop will obviously now be pushing. And as far as this idea of what this demoralization is, this was explained by KGB agent Yuri Bezmenov back in the 1980s. He shared that this demoralization campaign employed psychological warfare techniques to, quote, change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite an abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their family, their community, and their country. I mean, just look around. We see the results of this propaganda all over. People think that men can become women and women can become men. People think that disordered lifestyles are somehow inherently good when that's just not true. It's objectively false and wrong. But Bezmenov elaborates, saying it's a great brainwashing process, which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism, Leninism ideology is pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. I would argue Christianity is really what blunts this stuff. So this is indeed what is happening. And I just want to go over here and look at what Brian Niemeyer's recent post is too, because I think he has some really interesting stuff on this. Obviously, he's talking about AAA gaming here, but I think you can apply this to Warhammer. So just replace AAA gaming with Warhammer and say Warhammer is now a quicksand trap where players compulsively pursue the allure of false meaning while real meaning is stripped from their lives. Doubling down in an attempt to fill the void with more surrogate activities just demoralizes them further, especially when those surrogate activities are filled, obviously, with the propaganda. And then he says, for the folks in the cheap seats, the solution is not to fix the mass entertainment complex. There is no de-wokifying Warhammer and Games Workshop. Bringing back classic Warhammer is pining for a meaningless spook. Campaigning for Warhammer to stream a series that insults you a little less is just masochistic. What YouTube Culture Wars missed for years is that trying to resolve a crisis of meaning with more but less depraved consumerism is just idolatry. Nor is it a coincidence that consuming product has taken on religious overtones, especially among members of Generation Y. For those who don't know what Generation Y is or have bought into this idea that millennials encompass basically everyone who was born in like the 80s to the early 2000s, there is a area in there of Gen Y that Brian Niemeyer talks about, where they're kind of like they're in between Gen X and millennials. So that's where he's talking about with Gen Y. They're basically people like me who are kind of like mid 30s, older 30s, early 40s. So That's who he's talking about there. And then Niemeyer goes on and says, stop seeking false meaning in surrogate activities. Engage in pursuits that give you some degree of real control over your situation. Take off that shirt branded with another man's name. The only way to solve the crisis of meaning is turning back to the source of all meaning, Jesus Christ, because your heart is where your treasure is. And I don't think Niemeyer is obviously advocating for you to stop playing tabletop games, stop reading novels and things like that. Obviously, he is a novelist. He has a really good series that I like called Combat Frame X, and it's heavily inspired by Mobile Suit Gundam and a lot of mech anime out of Japan. I think there's probably some Warhammer influence in there as well. So he's just wanting you to get rid of this stuff that is propagandizing you, that you've spent probably more time on than worshiping God. And obviously we need to put God first, and then obviously we can have these pursuits, these hobbies, enjoy that fun, because obviously God enjoys fun too, but we have to put God first. And I think he's absolutely right here. And there is a place for our hobbies, and we have to just know how much time to spend on them. And I think that's kind of what he's talking about there. And then obviously don't engage in the hobbies that have been corrupted by this propaganda, that are part of this demoralization campaign that we are seeing with Warhammer over the past 4 years. Because remember, this isn't new with Warhammer. They had their whole Warhammer is for everyone, where they made it very clear that they would be pushing this propaganda through everything that they do. But let me know what you guys make of these folks boycotting this stuff, boycotting Warhammer, boycotting Games Workshop. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.